Hi there. I'm Christy Crocker. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Indoor Air Quality Council, and I'm here with Erin Boutino, who's with Northeast Laboratory Services here in Maine, and she's a member of the Board of Directors of the Maine Indoor Air Quality Council. So, you're here watching this video because you obviously have interest in learning a little bit more about how to deal with mold and moisture in rental properties. So, this video is designed to introduce you to a guidance document that we have created that's designed to help landlords and tenants deal with these issues when they occur in a rental property. So this is a picture of the guidance document. It's available for free on this webpage where this video is located. It's a free best practice guidance document that's designed for both landlords and tenants to use to be able to help them when these issues occur. The guidance document itself was created by a broad collaborative of individuals representing a big number of interests in landlord tenant issues. It was designed by landlords, tenants, public health people, building code professionals, as well as professionals from the legal assistance sectors. It's designed specifically for landlords and tenants to use, but these other professionals, so the health professionals, municipal officials, and legal professionals, can also find the guidance of help as they struggle to deal with these issues in rental properties in their towns. The guidance itself is split into three main sections. It's not a guidance document on mold itself, but we do provide users with some basic mold facts about what mold is, how it grows, and how you do proper cleanup and repair. And that's just so that the rest of the guidance document, the communication tips that we provide, and the step by step timelines, understanding those basic mold facts will help you understand those other two key components of the guidance document in a deeper way and within the perspective of what mold is and how you deal with it.
So when we use the word mold, it's one and the same as saying the word fungi. The words are ultimately interchangeable. And mold and fungi are natural. They're found everywhere and they're Earth's natural recycler. We really rely on mold more than you would think in our everyday life, not just for delicious beer and cheese, but it also breaks down all of the organic material that you find, like in the woods, and also it tries to do that same principle in our homes too. They're ultimately the same type of practice of what mold is meant to do, which is recycle nature. So in order for mold to even grow, it needs two things. It needs organic material, which is a food source, and it also needs water. So think of mold really similar in the way of a houseplant, what it needs in order to live indoors. It needs the soil and it needs it to be watered. And mold is the same basic principle. So without those two main ingredients, mold just can't live in our indoor environment. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that our homes are built with things from trees and plants. And so no matter what we do, we're always surrounded by that organic material, that food source. But instead, what is preventable is the moisture. So our homes are generally supposed to be clean and dry. And so when there is water, that is when there will be mold to grow because it's already always around us. But what it needs is that water component. And so in that center image, all it is just some water damage, but that center image is at risk of becoming like the outer two images. It can turn into moderate growth, and then if left for a really long time, it can become a pretty major issue in the property if it's not addressed. So if you find water, you have a risk of having mold right there alongside it. So with mold growth, we're concerned with two major things. We're concerned with building issues and we're concerned with health issues. So with building issues, mold can cause building decay, like you see on decaying buildings. It can also create that musty odor that you sometimes smell in basements. And it can also stain furnishings and different surfaces. So mold can cause all these three issues if just left to do its thing. And you can start to see these types of issues, maybe all of them, maybe some of them, on our building properties. So managing mold really does keep the integrity of your building in check. And the other thing with mold is we're concerned with the health concerns. So, not every person is going to be sensitive to mold. Much like pollen, you have some individuals who have some irritation, some have allergic reactions, while some have no symptoms at all. So, it's really up to the individual. Every human body is different. And so, when they're exposed to mold, they could react in a number of different ways. One thing that we keep in mind is that those with asthma or other lung disease, they may have more severe reactions than those typical allergic reactions that we see in the normal individual, but mostly irritation are the most common things that we find. But it's important to note that not every person is going to have a health problem. So if you have one person in one unit saying they're having a health issue and you go around and ask everybody else in the rental unit, how are they feeling? Are they feeling anything? And if they say no, that doesn't obsolete that one person. That one person could just be more sensitive than everybody else in the building to mold. So it doesn't make that one person crazy. It just is likely that they're more sensitive to mold than the other individuals in the property.
So the guidance itself, after we've gone through the basic mold facts, the rest of the guidance is divided into two categories. The first is when there's liquid water coming in from a flood, from a pipe leak, or for whatever reason, liquid water coming into a rental unit is an emergency situation. Then the second scenario that the guidance document deals with is when there's simply visible mold growth happening or a mold odor that we don't know the reason for. And that's the type of scenario that's going to require some investigation and consideration for what to do next. And the reason why the liquid water piece is more of an emergency than just the simple mold growth piece is because mold growth can start to grow on a damp surface within just 24 to 48 hours. So, for the integrity of a building property and for the health of the building occupants, it's always best to try to deal with those liquid water events as fast as possible in order to prevent the damage to the building. So, when there's liquid water moving in, and again, that's an emergency situation, if you're a tenant, what you need to do is to contact your landlord immediately. Whatever way the landlord has suggested to you that you contact them, that's how you should do it. And you should do it as fast as you possibly can. It's always best if you've been communicating with your landlord by phone or text that you follow up that communication to the landlord in some form of writing, whether that's in the form of an email or a letter. So if you're at a landlord and you've just received a contact from the tenant that there's liquid water leaking in, what you need to do is to respond immediately. Go into the unit and do whatever is necessary to stop the liquid water from leaking into the unit. Whether it's knocking off the ice dam, digging a trench from the water flooding into the foundation, turning off the pipe that's burst and is leaking, whatever it is, do whatever you can to try to stop that liquid water leaking in. The faster you do that, the less area is going to get wet and the more likely it is that you're going to minimize the amount of damage to your property and then minimize the risk that mold might grow that could make your tenants sick. Oh, sorry. I should pay attention. It's so if in the second scenario the water's not leaking in, but the tenant, say you're a tenant and you see mold growing on a surface, what you need to do is to first investigate your unit to see if there's any possible local sources for moisture or odor. Maybe there's a pile of wet towels in the bathroom or in your closet, or maybe you left a window open on the curtains and they've gotten wet, or maybe the refrigerator pan, if you have an older refrigerator, maybe the pan needs to be emptied and cleaned. Those types of things, and the guidance gives you a list of things to check for. You should look for first locally before you reach out to the landlord. But if you're unable to find or discover why it is that there might be mold growing on a surface or why there might be a funky odor, Within 5 days of noticing this, you should reach out to your landlord. Again, follow whatever communications avenue the landlord has asked you to do, but make sure that you're following that up in writing in the form of an email or a letter. So, if you're a landlord and you've just gotten the contact from the tenant that they're seeing visible mold or that there's a moldy odor, your next job is to go in within about 5 days of receiving that communication and inspect the unit thoroughly using your eyes and your nose to look for signs of moisture damage and visible mold growth and moldy odors. Within 5 days of doing that unit inspection, make sure that you're preparing a repair and restoration plan and at least communicating to the tenant in writing what steps you're taking to try to resolve the issues that you have uncovered.
So when we're talking about moisture, we're talking about things from emergency events like leaking, from pipe bursts, from high humidity during certain seasons, can come from even clogged rain gutters. Those can all cause a water problem in a rental unit or any building for that matter. But moisture can also be a problem from just everyday activities. Even cooking and showering can actually make a lot of humidity, more than you would think, and could lead to that mold growth. It could also come from poor building maintenance. If, like Christy was saying, if you're not maintaining the refrigerator drip pan, like in this image, you're going to just see some start issues happening from just that high moisture and that water just being left dormant. So finding the moisture, it could be just from everyday use, or it could come from these emergency situations. All of these have that water component that we have to keep in mind. And so this is just images of water that was not addressed and then turned into mold growth. So all this discoloration you're seeing like on the windowsill, on the backside of a carpet, in an attic space, all of these areas are where water was left unaddressed and then turned into mold. So it's really important to address that first water component so this doesn't even happen.
One thing to keep in mind is when you're creating that repair and restoration plan, at least here in the state of Maine, there may be certain types of mold scenarios that you could feel fairly confident of being able to address yourself as the landlord or hiring a contractor to do the work for you. But one thing that's most important is that you follow best practice guidance. Now, what is very common sometimes is to take bleach to try to clean the area and then put a clean coat of paint over the surface. That is not addressing the source of the mold, which is the moisture, and that isn't going to stop the mold from continuing to grow. So using bleach and covering it with a surface of paint, it really is not best practice guidance. These are some samples of available best practice guidance. They're available for free on the internet. And the reason why we refer people to this type of guidance to follow is because it does several things. When you follow best practice guidance, you make sure that you're preventing the spread of mold spores throughout your building, because if that happens during the cleanup and you don't take care to contain the mold spores, you could run the risk of mold growing throughout the building beyond the localized scenario which caused it to grow in the first place. The other reason you want to make sure you're following best practice guidance is it's going to protect the health of the people who are doing the work to do the proper cleanup and repair. And it's also going to protect the health of the people who are living in the building. So these best practice guidance documents, absolutely EPA, CDC, New York City, NIOSH, and there's a whole list of organizations there. They all have great guidance for how to do proper cleanup and repair in buildings. So absolutely follow this guidance document when you have these issues. Just very quickly, it's going to cost you, if you're a landlord and there's been a leak or a moisture event that's happening in the building, it's going to cost you more if you wait and let that moisture problem linger. Quick cleanup of mold surface issues and quick cleanup of moisture damage is not going to cost as much as when you let large areas of moisture linger and start to grow and cause significant building damage. And the difference in cost could be between several $100s to several thousand or even tens of $1,000s to where you need to do the proper cleanup and repair of a very large damaged area. We have some other resources available on this website that I encourage you to use. If you're a landlord, there's an infographic here that you can post in common areas that not only encourages tenants to tell you about problems when they occur, but also gives both landlords and tenants places where they can look for common mold and moisture issues. We have a couple of interesting videos that help convey issues associated with the guidance document. And then there's several checklists that both landlords can use and tenants can use to manage moisture in the rental units before there's a problem that causes mold growth that can impact occupant health. Above all, communication is absolutely the key to success with this guidance document. Because after all, landlords and tenants actually share a common goal. They both want a safe and healthy place for people to live. Landlords are not going to be able to fix a tenant's mold problem unless they've been told by the tenant that there is a problem. And tenants won't know about what the status is of the cleanup and repair of problem unless they've been informed by the landlord. So making sure there's that easy flow of communication back and forth between the landlord and tenant being followed up in writing is the best way to have success in dealing with a mold and moisture problem in a rental unit.
And the nice thing with this guidance document is it strictly outlines, who is responsible for what when, like we had went over, breaking down those two different situations. Are you dealing with water? Are you dealing with molds? And it breaks down how the two parties should be communicating. I value that greatly in the guidance document, very step by step and to the point.
Thank you so much for watching this video today. If you have any other questions or have any interest in some group trainings on the guidance, please do let us know. You can visit us here anytime at mainindoorair.org. The office phone number is right here on the webpage along with my personal email address. I encourage you, if you want more information, to please do reach out and we'd be happy to work with you with your issues. So thank you again for watching.